everybody, you're listening and maybe you're watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in. And we're back with you after only a week because schedules are weird and we're going to get the episodes in. They just may not be when you want to, when you usually expect them to. So, October's weird as hell for me too, folks. God almighty.
We'll be looking forward to that.
We will figure it out. So, I know we usually start with news or some geek gets. I know we're very limited on the geek gets because it's only been a week and we haven't done much. You want to get through those first, or?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. The geek get. I believe we have a geek get.
I have a get. I believe Caleb has a. Caleb, why don't we start?
Might also
yours
get.
is cool.
Yeah.
I'll start. Yeah, so I'll start now. Now, hopefully, this ties into a geek get that I haven't geek got yet. So, but the only geek get, and I'm totally cheating, is a copy of the newest previews that I picked up from my local comic shop. But I wanted to show it off because it features my crew, my favorite cartoon ever, the Gargoyles. And that tangentially ties into my geek get because I am expecting a very, very, very cool piece of art from artist Alex Regal, who drew an amazing Gargoyles piece for me that is on its way.
Cool.
And you can see that on his Facebook page. I think it's Illustrated One is his Facebook page. Just look at our Facebook or Instagram. Go check that out. It's the hotness.
Cool.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, we're definitely looking forward to seeing that because, yeah.
And Caleb, did you get all of the NECA figures at this point?
I am still missing one that they have produced, but I am going to get it this weekend when our buddy Brian Newberry meets me in Memphis for the Memphis Comic Expo, which I will be at all day Saturday. I'm only staying for one day. I'm not doing both of them, but I'm driving up Friday. We are staying with Brian's brother who has a home there. So they've been sweet enough to invite me in to let me stay. And Brian and I are going to hit the con. So if you're in Memphis on Saturday at the Comic Expo, find me somewhere bouncing about Artist Alley, trying not to spend all my last lawyer paycheck that I finally get. So, I was like, ooh.
Okay, well,
Awesome.
for my geek get, it's kind of a run-on from last week. Last time around, I talked about going to see Ghost and Mastodon live, and this past Saturday, I went to another metal show, and that was Meshuggah and Converge and Torch. Now, Torch are led by Steve Brooks, who's, a bear, for lack of a better word. And I would say we've become friends in the last few years. We always meet up after his shows, and I was able to see him. The twist with Torch right now is this is his last tour with the band. He's the leader of the group, but he's leaving. He's effectively getting out of the music business, at least for the time being. So if you are wanting to see Torch, if you've never seen them before, they are on tour again with Meshuggah. First part of the tour is with Converge. The second part is with In Flames. So however you look at it, it's a good metal bill. Converge were fucking terrible.
Yeah.
They were terrible.
In Flames, I would go see In Flames in a heartbeat.
Yeah. So that's I would say that's kind of the better lineup. But in terms of the geek get, again, we're possibly looking at an entity that's in the end of its touring lifespan. And at the show, I did get the Torch the live sessions, Volume 1. These are radio sessions and I guess video, this counterpart, that Torch did in 2019, just before the pandemic. One at the Chicago Music Exchange and the other with KXLU's Part-Time Punks show. And there's only 1,000 copies of this on vinyl, and there's only 150 copies that are on yellow translucent vinyl, and it's a crapshoot whether you get the black or the yellow. And look what I got.
Nice.
So, really nice to have that. And just to almost give like a semi-wolf to Torch, if you guys have never listened to them, they are very often lumped in with stoner metal, partly because of Floor, the band that Steve and some of the other guys in Torch were part of prior to Torch forming. It's really like an unfortunate tag because there's so much more to that group. And it's also frustrating because they're so much better than some bands that have attained, much greater levels of success, which is, I don't understand it, because they're much better at what they do than some other bands that are kind of in the same orbit that seem to have, a greater degree of success. But that's not the measure of a great band ever. So,
and some of that notoriety is just
if you can, especially my favorite is Harmonicraft. That's my favorite album by Torch. So check that stuff out if you're not afraid of aggressive music. But there are also reference points from various places that don't necessarily stick into the metal idiom. So there's a lot there. That's my geek at Torch album.
I prefer passive aggressive music, so that's pretty. I will check them out because I do have sort of like a mix of tastes, and I'll go with some really hard metal, and then flip on some Nico Case or whatever. So it's like it's. Who knows what my YouTube music, I think, has a seizure every other day.
If you look at the titles here, you think this is a family, like without a doubt,
That's what I love about, Bill especially, but our little group here, like all of us have extremely broad musical tastes. Like, so Bill and I are part of a broader comics community that has a little Slack page or whatever, and there's a music section on there. And if you go back and look at the stuff that we post, it's everything from metal, 80s metal, 70s metal, new wave, hip hop, country, jazz. It's everything. Like I think the thing I like about our group is that we appreciate music and not just a scene.
Yeah, and I've certainly discovered some new music from it.
Yeah,
I've made at least two purchases
cool.
from that. One a legacy purchase, the other a brand new group that I don't know if I ever would have been exposed to. Just because it's hard. It's hard for bands to get exposure now.
It is.
It's easier and it's harder at the same time. The internet is so strange. But there was something else I wanted to say on that note, but it's left me. Maybe it'll come back.
I mean, one of the. I mean, speaking of like interesting music that you guys have recommended, I actually did listen to the whole Oliver Sim album that you recommended the other day. And he does have a couple music videos that are out from there that are fascinating on top of that, as well as a 20 or 30 minute short film that I believe was part of either Sick Guests or one of the recent film festivals.
Yeah.
That it refers to this solo album. So
the interest of, we mentioned Oliver Sim. He is one of the three members of the X's. Or I know there's one person swears they're pronounced the XX, but I'll listen to the band on that one. But with that particular band, I always thought musically it's like 90% Jamie X. I always thought that he was even though Oliver sings almost as much as not Mary, I forget her, Rona, whatever her name is, the girl. Sorry about that. I didn't realize until I heard the solo album just how much input he has in that capacity about the sound of the band. And he did have a live show in June, and I wish I knew about it in New York. And just for cool covers, I know it's I think in the Spotify set that he has this really cool stripped down cover version of Placebo's Nancy Boy, which is a perfect song for him too. So
interesting.
Yeah. So, and my concert husband Tom, he said the other day, I know it's early for album of the year, but and he's really digging it. So,
well, maybe January would be too early, but I mean, by the time we're almost done with September, albums of the year have happened up to this point. So
we should totally closer to the end of the year have a segment where we talk about because I keep a playlist on my Spotify account of albums that came out this year that I really enjoy. Mm-hmm. So like I do it for each year, and so maybe at the end of the year we talk about that. We like list our 5 favorite albums of the year. That would be awesome.
Yeah. And, it's also coming. There's a band called the Aluminum Group that I never heard of before. And LGBT, been two brothers, been releasing records since the 90s. I never heard of this band. And it's like exactly in one of my wheelhouses, in that kind of chamber pop, left bank, divine comedy area. And they also seem to like me on Facebook and Twitter because they do respond to some of my posts. So, unfortunately, they're playing during New York Comic Con and they're playing on a boat. So, I don't know if after a day of comic walking with my fat ass and my old legs that I could stand that, but at some point down the road. But there have been some. I'm not as up on music as I used to be, just because there's a big feeling right now of been there, done that with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But and I think that's maybe like that's really the sign of a great group if they're kind of breaking through to my jaundiced ears now.
Yeah. Because I mean, you are going through your hipster phase, right?
My hipster phase began in 1988 and it hasn't stopped.
Oh.
Or
that's kind of like that feeling of like,
or I've never had one.
I would say you've never had one, but truthfully, you probably never had one. Yeah. But I mean that kind of like, I've already listened to everything that that I could ever possibly like. So I'm just going to keep listening to only the music that I have liked before. I've seen that attitude a lot, and it's tough because you have the cookie cutter stuff that comes out every year that sells and it's popular, and that's what makes pop music. But there's so many things out there that just slip through the cracks and surprise you.
Yeah.
But even randomly something comes up.
Even with pop music, so this phenomenon, I'm in my mid 30s now, and there like music scenes are repeating themselves. So I'm hearing a lot of stuff from musically from new bands that sounds a lot like mid 90s, maybe late 80s stuff that they're redoing, maybe even early 2000s stuff. But it's a cycle of repetition that's always happened with music. And if you listen to music from them, from the early 90s, you can hear things that, except within reason, that go back to some 70s stuff. And it's always recycled. So I'm at that point now to where I actually enjoy listening to bands that hit like this is a really cool new way to tickle my nostalgic buttons in my brain with sounds, but it's still fresh. Like they're still doing something. And sometimes you run the risk of it just sounding like a cover band. What is that new band that sounds a lot like Led Zeppelin?
Greta Van Fleet.
Yeah, Greta Van Fleet. Like I'm not bashing them by any means. Those are some incredibly talented people. But they just sound kind of cover bandy. But even still, there's a lot of talent there. But I just I appreciate music for the sake of music. And so when you start hearing these things that they're taking and they're repurposing and recapturing from an audio standpoint, that's like I appreciate that, and I don't see it being you're just you're retreading old ground for the sake of it. Well, everything's pushing forward in some sense. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. We do have David Toby joining us.
Hey,
hello,
David
Mr.
Toby.
David. How's it going? But yeah, maybe maybe we can do some potpourri stuff towards the end of the year, like have a music episode or
like just even like a best of where we also throw in like our favorite films,
Oh yeah, just
have to watch some films.
Films. You can watch some films. I mean, I'm sure like best documentaries this year, maybe Phil Lynot's.
Yeah, I was looking at the roster of films that are coming out in November and December, and there seems to be some really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I get most excited about documentaries now, just where my head's been at.
Yeah.
So if there's
still need to see that David Bowie
breaking through, if there's a narrative film that's breaking through from that kind of noise, I'm all there for it. I'm all there for it.
Yeah. Speaking of, I almost said something. Speaking of films, but I'm actually gonna save it for my Wolf of the Week. I have a really cool shout out that I'm kind of giddy to give, but it's gonna be my Wolf.
Okay. Now, Steve, was there any big news this week? I couldn't think. Excuse me.
No, I keep my eye open throughout the week and, in between shows and stuff, just for any kind of tidbits that come up. And there really wasn't anything that really kind of grabbed me. And it might just be because it's been just 1 week since we last, we're streaming.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just but we're also coming up on New York Comic Con, so we're hopefully going to be getting some big news of some sort, some comic news, some movie news, some TV news probably out of that. There's only one thing that I can really think of that is kind of interesting, and again, it's all related to the chummy shark-filled waters of the WB disco fracas that's happening. But, other than they completely jettisoned any J.J. Abrams projects now are no longer going to be part of HBO Max. So that, kind of kicks the poor Madam X possible series that was going to be coming out, and the Constantine series that he was planning on doing are now gone. Now, the Constantine series, though, the reason that they are not going forward with that is because they're going to do a sequel to the Keanu Reeves American version of Constantine, which I know gets a lot of flack because it's Constantine, but not my Constantine or whatever. It was a fun movie. Mm-hmm. It had a great cast and was a very interesting take, a very kind of Hollywood American take on the concept of John Constantine, but
it's a very Malibu John Constantine.
Very
it's like
Malibu. I'm really depressed and stuff. It was fun. It was fun. And Emma Davis, not Emma Davis. Yeah.
And like you said, the cast is excellent. Hansu and Stormare. There were some really good people in that.
Yeah. And a good concept that worked out, I think, for that film. So I'm interested in seeing exactly what they're going to do for a sequel. Because, in general Hollywood fashion, they kind of have a happy ending-ish, that kind of happens out of that. So you're like, where are you going to go from here if it's going to continue? But I'm sure they'll figure something out. Because it's got Keanu Reeves in it, and everyone likes Keanu. He's everybody's sweetheart. So, but yeah, I think that was basically it. So
yeah,
Madam X fans, really sorry to hear about that. But
sorry for both of you.
Yeah. all three of you. I feel you're.
I would have been excited for it too.
I would have loved one.
I'm excited
after Saturday Comics.
Anything.
What was it? It was Wednesday Comics once. Wednesday Comics, several years ago, and then sort of like that little initiative where they had those one shots, and Madame Xanadu was one of them. I was all for it, but
I have probably every Madame Xanadu story from the 70s onward, because I have the whole run of Doorway to Nightmare. I think I have all of her issues from Unexpected. I have everything. Matt Wagner. Of course, I'm going to be.
Yeah. Was she ever featured in Showcase at all, like DC Showcase, or was it just
no?
Yeah, just sort of like the other anthologies.
Doorway to Nightmare was a 5-issue series, and then that was one of the victims of. It's under here of the DC Implosion. And then the stories, and it was amazing because they had prepared, when the DC Explosion happened, just for people who don't know what this is, so listen to the old guy here.
History lesson.
Yeah. In 1978, DC Comics had a promotion called the DC Explosion. And all of their titles, though they increased in coinage by 15 cents, they jumped from 35 to 50 cents, which was not easy for kids then, but they all increased their page count to 8 additional pages, and so there was more content. Almost every book had either an extended story or backup story. and that was how their line was going to proceed. However, when they got the sales reports from there was like about a 4-month lag with sales reports that could be relied upon. That was also a huge winter for blizzards in the United States between 77 and 78. So a lot of stuff got immediately canceled. The page counts went back down to a standard 32-page book. And the DC Explosion is known as the Implosion. It only lasted 3 months and resulted with over a third of the titles in the line being canceled. Very briefly, Detective Comics was canceled. Detective Comics was one of the books that was going to be axed. People at the company said, "This is ridiculous. This is the title. You know, that's where our fucking name comes from.
Your namesake, yeah."
Comics, and Batman Family at the point was a title was going to continue, and it became Detective Comics featuring the Batman family. I know it's hard for people to, like, in the modern day, to appreciate that there were 3 Batman ongoing titles that would, like, you know,
only 3.
Yeah, and one of them was bi-monthly at that point. So with
how did they ever get along?
So with the Implosion, going back to that, Doorway to Nightmare, which featured Madame Xanadu doing full-length stories, was prepared like months in advance because it was the type of book that different artists and writers could tell stories from her perspective and not necessarily be locked into a continuity. So the book never actually had a regular writer. It's a really nice device, you know? And so the stories after 5, when it was the surprise cancellation, were burned off in The Unexpected, which became the dollar comic, a giant size book. And there was one story, though, which was written by Steve Englehart with art by Marshall Rogers, the team behind, Strange Apparition, however you want to characterize that amazing run on Batman in Detective Comics. And that became one of the earliest direct market only, the Madame Xanadu #1. And it's a wonderful story if you ever want to seek it out. I don't think it's ever been reprinted. Maybe in one of the Marshall Rogers collections. And so from there, I think I have like every Madame Xanadu story. I certainly have like every time she popped up in the Spectre. I might have everything.
Spectre, when she showed up in New 52 for it was Justice League Dark. She was the impetus for the Justice League Dark from the New 52. Mm-hmm. Brought everybody together. Mm-hmm. It would have been interesting to see a live action series, how a series would go, maybe as an anthology, maybe Xanadu kind of acting as a host for strange things that would connect to old DC comic stories.
There was a little tease this past week, though. And we had a picture of Breck from Stargirl pictured next to Jeff Johns, Titans director, and the actor who plays Beast Boy with the fucking green hair. And that might be something in the future. And I was also thinking there's nothing in the back history on Stargirl that would necessarily conflict with Titans. They could be in the same world.
Could.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, other than what we know from from the CW Arrowverse, how it relates to Stargirl and the Stargirl characters who popped up briefly in the Crisis of Infinite Earths crossover they did. There's potential there for anything really to happen. And honestly, when it comes now to WBDC property, property shows, it could be anything goes at this point. Yeah. So it would be interesting.
But it's interesting when I was thinking about that, there's really nothing that would prevent them having the same continuity.
The only thing it would be interesting, and obviously that capable writers can do this, but to mesh the two with there being such tonal differences in the show, in the two shows, that would be a strange mix, I think, from my end, because it is tonally one is much darker, one is much. I don't want to use the word campy because I don't think Stargirl is campy, but it is.
It's light. It's much more lighthearted.
Yeah, it's a lot lighter
touch. But you say that, but think of the Arrowverse, and there are episodes of Legends of Tomorrow that you can't believe are happening at the same time as Arrow.
Yeah. So. But even Arrow had light moments in between the I've got a secret I'm not going to tell you and I'm going to betray you in about 5 episodes kind of thing. Like there were some light-hearted moments. Same thing with The Flash. You had a lot of goofiness that came in from certain characters that, obviously there'd be a dark twist at some point. But, there's some possibility there. And Stargirl itself, even though it is a much lighter show, has had some moments of
it has some
real, real darkness. I mean, last season when Eclipso was that little boy and that episode with him and Beth, who the Dr. Midnighter, just tough. That was a harsh episode and it was really well done, I think so. But it would be exciting. And I'm trying, and like Bill had mentioned, it's like, is this a Titans episode crossover or is it a Stargirl episode crossover? I think it just depends on when the picture was taken, what show they were filming, where this kind of comes in.
We shall see.
We'll see.
So before we move on from news, and just since we mentioned Batman, I think we would be remiss if we didn't comment that Batman Day has come and passed since we last gathered together. So for whatever that's worth, I know a lot of comic shops have
happy belated.
Together. Yeah, happy belated Batman Day to both of you. So
and also with you,
our friend for our friend Hassan, it's Christmas. So, so we
that's true,
but it's always fun. Batman, especially if you have a local comic shop that does stuff for Batman Day or whenever they do stuff, it is always a fun day. There's always little gimmicks, and it is nice if you're in our circles. You start seeing people post their favorite Batman images, Batman artists, this, that, and the other. Kind of reminisce on the history of it, so it's fun.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was they usually, some stores, especially smaller stores, tend to have a little bit of something going on.
Yeah,
for fans. So David comes up here again mentioning that possibly Doom Patrol might also be crossing over. I haven't heard anything about that.
No, because the Doom Patrol is not exactly the same Doom Patrol as Titans, though it's technically spun out of it.
Yeah.
And I think
it's a different Doom Patrol.
The showrunners of Doom Patrol have mentioned that.
Yeah, there are definitely 2 different Doom Patrols, the one that we saw in Titans and the one that has the show. They just happen to have some of the same people, but there's definitely a difference there, but that doesn't mean, again, that it can't happen.
But also one of the pilots that is moving forward is Dead Boy Detectives.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it's moving forward because it has Neil Gaiman attached to it.
It could be
just Neil Gaiman DNA, I should say.
Yeah.
So,
and I do believe there's also like a new series they announced for Sandman Universe of Dead Boy Detective. I believe so.
That would be. I mean, it would fit with the comics line as it is because it's like one.
But that is one pilot that is moving forward.
So. Yeah, which is good.
And how close will be pilot in Doom Patrol anyway too. So same actors that they have.
Yeah.
Engaged.
And David's clarifying here: both Doom Patrol and Stargirl will be crossing into Titans in the upcoming season. He would have to find the source, but that's the current info in it. Okay. So that would make sense that they're in the process of filming Titans now, where they have finished or mostly finished Stargirl. Yeah. So she would be.
And look, with Doom Patrol, with Danny the Street, you can cross into any fucking thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's
God, I love Danny the Street.
Multiverse, fourth wall, whatever.
What the hell,
Cool.
Cross into ghosts.
Ghosts. Huh? Halloween is coming up.
Yeah. You gonna say the band or?
A series on CBS I actually watch. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, yes, Ghosts. Ghosts, the US version of Ghosts, is premiering. The new season is premiering next Thursday.
Yeah.
So
I got thrown
from
because tonight they have like 3 episodes on.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, the like show like, you know, maybe remember when they used to have like those highlight shows?
Yes.
You know, when they're like when you'd have like, you know, the Golden Girls around the table, you know, they're like, do you remember when we did this? You know, the clip shows. Yeah. I don't know if anybody does
Bottle episodes and clip shows, the laziest form of TV writing.
Well, that was the thing where you had where you were signed for 13, got the back 9, and only had enough time to do 8. You know, so, could be.
Somebody's going to get an unfortunate call, and gosh, remember all those other times that we got unfortunate calls? Call back, you know. Yeah. Or somebody gets a knock on the noggin, and they're trying, like, memory loss and trying to tell stories to get them to remember them. Remember that time?
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Anyway.
Let's go over to the virtual spinner rack. This is the universal symbol for spinner rack. Steve, take a book. Tell us
what that is.
Sure. Maybe. So the first book I'm going to talk about today is a book that, from 2 people that I know I personally love, and I think we collectively love as well. Yolanda Zanfordino and Elisa Romboli.
Been very nice friends of the show. Very nice.
They're wonderful. I always love hearing from them and, chatting with them. They're just so much fun. And it's also great because, I love their work together. And it was just sort of like sheer chance, that I just kind of fell absolutely in love with Alison Leatherland. And that was my introduction to their, to their collaborations. And of course, a thing called Truth that came out, I want to say it was towards the end of last year, was their first book with Image. And now their next follow-up book with Image, completely different genre altogether. And that is The Least We Can Do. This is, I believe this is the cover B. Yeah, cover B. But it's interesting because it is a post-apocalyptic or post end of the world situation, new society rising from the ashes with a twist, with some interesting things that are happening there. And this takes place about 40 years after what's called the creation. And the main character, Uriel, is looking to join up with a group of rebels in London who have been pushing up against the the current ruling group, which is basically the Eden Army, that have more or less taken control of the remnants of the civilization in the UK to try and bring some order to the post-crash chaos. But part of the reason why they call it the creation is that these things called the medium, which are, from what we could tell, gemstones that contain some type of power, or at least confer power to the wielders of these gemstones, sort of rose from the ashes as part of the society, and people have been able to use them like superpowered, gemstones. And of course, those are very strictly controlled by the Eden Army. And the group that Uriel seeks out, who is called the Eclipse, have been able to get their hands on some of the medium, some of the stones, to sort of teach themselves how to use them and hopefully fight back. The book is really great. There's some, there's definitely a lot of exposition that Yolanda is getting out in this first issue because it's a brand new world. She wants to get the world building out of the way pretty quickly so that we know where Uriel is in time and why she's doing what she's doing. And sort of her history is, it's being sort of like, doled out very sparingly so you can kind of get her motivation for being how she is. She's extremely optimistic. She's got that quality that I love in their collaborative characters, of this sort of almost terminal optimist, but with like that fragile, there's something fragile there. So you don't want the bubble to burst. It could at any time, but they're hanging on to that absolute positivity. that I love so much, and you just instantly want to like, oh, that's the character I just want to give a big hug to. I'm really enjoying where it's going to. The art is, as usual, gorgeous. The colors are gorgeous. And we get a return of one of my favorite bits from Alice in Leatherland, and that's sort of the, storybook style.
Nice.
And in providing the storybook style sort of to tell the history of the creation, what happened, Uriel shows pictures of her journal when she presents to the Eclipse why she should join, and it's very cute. It's a great little technique, and I love it. Loved it from Alice in Leatherland because it kind of gives it's an interesting little break in the action and the dialogue. It provides a lot of information, but it's done in a very cute way. So, but again, the colors are absolutely gorgeous. The action is really nice, and just some of how Elisa draws characters. I mean, she gets sort of a very queer sensibility and strength with her characters. A lot of the female presenting characters and others. I just love the design. So I'm really excited for this. I believe this is another 5-issue series. And so I'm looking forward to it. It just released, I believe, last week, at the time of recording.
Yeah. I feel I stunk in that I didn't read the advanced copy that we received from the creators, and then we also had it in the last image pack. So I feel bad, but I am getting a copy in my next box.
Nice.
Not of the cover you have, one of the other covers.
And I think the A covers are all very beautiful because Elisa's actually done. She did all 3 of the variants.
Yeah.
So
I will eventually be able to comment on it, but wasn't able to in this stretch. But I'm very happy about this book coming out. Looks great.
Yeah,
sounds
definitely.
great from what you've described.
Yeah, it's a good first issue introduction to this world. So I'm excited for all the rest that will happen. And I know from my previous experience with her other books, I really enjoy what I read, what I see when I see this collaboration. I think they're just a great team, and really looking forward to continuing.
All right.
So.
All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what's something you're reading that you're enjoying that you would like to tell us all about?
So I got a little something new from a publisher that I have not read in a very, very long time, featuring a character that is one of the only characters, or one of the few characters I've read from the publisher. But I picked up the first issue of Bloodshot Unleashed from Valiant Comics. I enjoy Bloodshot. So again, I've read very, very little in the way of Valiant books, and Bloodshot being one of them that I have read. And I've read his stories back from the Harbinger Wars, all the way through Jeff Lemire's great run on that character. I really, really like. I loved that book, and I picked that up because of Jeff. He's as I said before on the show, I can't be objective about Jeff Lemire anymore. He's my favorite comics writer, easily. So, which led me to other stuff. I really enjoy the character, so I was really excited when I saw this solicited in the previews, and I got even more excited when I saw John Davis Hunt was the artist on it, because John Davis Hunt, I first saw him when he worked on the Wildstorm book with Warren Ellis, the reboot that they did not too long ago over at DC. And he's got a fantastic style. I absolutely love it. Fell in love with the pages that he did, and was like one of those artists. I was like, oh, like I will. Number one, he's got an easy name to commit to memory, but I will, whenever I see this guy, I'll pick up his stuff. He's just got a really, really cool. It's hard to describe his style. Really detailed, fine line, thin line. Not Stoko by any means, but just very, very cool, crisp style. But it was written by Dennis Camp, who I am not familiar with, and I looked up some of his stuff to see if by happenstance I'd read any of it. I haven't. He's only, at least in the page I looked at, he's only credited with writing about 11 comics. I know he did 2 issues of 20th Century Man, which, hey, like up and comer, hopefully we'll see his name more often, because his book was really good. And he was able to do a couple of really cool narrative tricks, which I really like. part of picking up a book like this, and I think something that with a character like Bloodshot, who does have a legacy, but not a ton of people know about. Vin Diesel played him in some movie, but nobody talks about it. But it helps with this book if you know a little bit about his history, but you don't have to know all of it. All you essentially need to know is that he was essentially a soldier of fortune who was hijacked by a clandestine agency, and they replaced his blood with nanobots, and now he can't die. He replaces himself, but he's a very troubled person, right? Like, so he's been through a lot of shit. He's not only seen his family destroyed, very very much a Frank Castle-esque type of character, so to speak. Seen his family destroyed, has to deal with the fact that he was a walking science project. He was abused by the people who he worked for, and is just kind of a walking PTSD bundle. And this book capitalizes on that, and they go back and they remind you of some things. So one of the really cool things that this first issue does is it plays in two different timelines. It plays in then and now, and then focuses on a very just a very triggering moment. It's a very our man Bloodshot is sitting alone on the couch and has imbibed several bottles of booze, and is the depression and the PTSD has taken over, and he puts the barrel of a gun in his mouth, pulls trigger, except he's Bloodshot, so he can't die, right? So just comes back, but it's this very moment where he's dealing with it. Cut to now, where he is walking into a wasteland. It looks like a post-apocalyptic hellscape. Like, the whole town has been destroyed. There's people hanging on crosses as he's walking into it. Somebody has annihilated this. And so you start to figure out what's happening and how you play off each other and how one leads to another. In the then time, he stumbles upon a woman who is very much an agent, right? Like she looks like somebody who works for a government entity. And he's like, so, who are you with? Are you with Project Rising? What was it? Rising Star? Are you with the FBI, CIA? Who are you? Rising Spirit. And she says, well, it could be any, could be all of them, but it doesn't matter because I'm about 3 seconds away from committing treason. Then it cuts back to the future where he's dealing with this wasteland honcho murder guy with mutton chops. Like, it's a really cool character design, but it's just, they stumble upon each other and like, oh yeah, we're, backwards hat, we're totally fixing to gun it out. Let's have this conversation, talk back and forth for a minute till we get there. But eventually, inevitably, these two are gonna have a firefight, right? So it's gonna happen. But the story was great. It really did play off each other. It's not an easy trick for writers to do, to say, hey, we're going to operate in two different timelines, and from 2 pages to 2 pages, we're going to bounce back and forth. And in the spirit of conceptual continuity, they also did that thing that Steve just talked about, where they used a completely different style. John Davis Hunt did, to give you some of that storybook element where they're talking about a third time in the past, this memory. Look, ultimately, I love John Davis Hunt's layouts. If you know his work from his other stuff, he does some really cool stuff. He's not afraid of panels. He'll pack a bunch of them on there. Great eye for how things flow on the page. Ultimately, it's a very, very good story. Troubled character, can't die, is a machine, is made for killing things, but is not a robot. And I think that comes across really, really well. So I'm definitely going to stick with this, if nothing but for the art alone. I really dig it. I'm not reading anything else from Valiant right now. I don't know if you two gentlemen are, but it's just not something I've grabbed. There's some really cool, like look, Archer and Armstrong is great. Like, and there's some really, if you look at Valiant's quote unquote stable of writers and artists right now, they've got some talent there. They really do. I'm just not, I'm just not reading any of it. I'm getting my superhero fix and kicks elsewhere. But people like Faith are in the book. I mean, there's a lot. Ninja K, there's some cool stuff there, but really glad to have picked this up and to tap back into a character that I really, really, really enjoy, with some great art, fun packed story, and was more than what I expected it to be. And ultimately, that's a fun time, right? Like when something just, even when your expectations are low, or even when they're high, and it just is more than what you want it to be. That's a great time reading comics. So definitely go check this out, see what they're doing, and also go read the Jeff Lemire run, because it's fucking amazing. So
yeah. Yeah, no, I totally second that. Jeff Lemire's run on Bloodshot, I mean, just for the creation of Blood Squirt alone is just worth the entire price of admission. And I think it's in a couple collections. That was Bloodshot. Was it Bloodshot
Unleashed or Unlimited?
Unleashed, Unbound, something like that. There was a subtitle to that. The one thing, and I do kind of like this, that some writers are able to really work with, is that Bloodshot as a character, because he's effectively immortal, and it really doesn't matter who he was prior to Bloodshot, because now that's all he can be.
Yeah.
And they play with the idea of, false memories, false histories. Was he ever a real person, or is it just a, personality engram that's just been assigned to, this collection of nanobots? I think they did something really interesting with him in Bloodshot, like in 4001 AD, where his personality was completely consumed by the nanobots, and all he was basically a nanobot entity playing as a man. And I think it's interesting when you do have writers that get to kind of play with time as much as they do with the concept of, like, does what he what kind of actions he takes, does it ever ultimately matter? And even if it did matter, would he really remember or even be, the beneficiary of the consequences? So it's Bloodshot is an interesting character, and unfortunately I was less impressed with the last Bloodshot series that had come out. It wasn't not to really insult the writer or the artist there, and I can't recall off the top of my head, but the story didn't really hit those notes, so you almost didn't really get that.
I picked up the first issue or the first 2 issues of it because I'm like, usually when Bloodshot comes out, I'll try it because it's fun, right? Like, it's in my wheelhouse. I'll check it out, and it just felt stock, and I hate using that phrase, but it felt like, okay, this is something that's been sitting on the shelf for a while, and they had it for a very, it was a very beige take on a type of character using an archetype, and they pulled it off and they dusted it. They blew the dust off of it and they said, okay, Bloodshot story. Bloop. And then put it. And so it wasn't, like, again, not to insult anybody, because ultimately it was fine. I mean, like, I'm sure it ended up good. It just didn't grab me. But it's just,
it could have been like an image, like a early 90s image story.
Yeah.
Where it could have been sort of like 90s, like a very, very kind of like 90s feel to it. A mercenary character gets involved in, double cross, and characters that could be heroes, could be could help him, maybe are not going to help him.
And one of the things I like is that when writers do this with Bloodshot, and there's a few other characters they do it with, but they get into the psyche and the damage of what it's like. Okay, yeah, but like you've had your brain ripped off and pulled back together. So, like, what happens? what is it like when your hippocampus is stitching itself back together and your cerebellum is like, what does that do to you? And they get into some of that here. So, but also, Woofy Wasteland Murder Patriot Daddy could comic book get it. So,
comic book. Well, I mean, and the thing is, some artist's depiction of Bloodshot, I mean, like, hey, he's a little pale, he might need a little bit of sun, but those of you who've seen me with my shirt off know we share that in common. Blinding. Oh yeah, that's some beard. That's some gun too,
with a real big gun.
He's got a real big gun. Does he have a lot of pouches? That's my question. Is he going for the full?
This is making me a little bit nostalgic for the days on this show when it was Steve and Matt Brossard, and we basically had like the Valiant segment week because you guys were reading everything and digging everything. Yeah. I have to see
that was in the Valiant Renaissance of 2012, 14,
later
15.
I have to say the only new Valiant I've read has been consistently Archer and Armstrong, because I just love those characters so much, and you can put them in any situation and something will work. I read the first EXO trade, and what was the miniseries? The Book of Dead. which I thought was
Book of the Dead.
Yeah, I thought was really good. But
Book of Shadows is running now.
Yeah,
is
I seem to know a lot more about it just because of what you guys, when it was happening, were talking about with Valiant. So that's my question with Steve. Have you kept up with Valiant?
I'd say it's probably been easier to keep up with Valiant just by the fact that they've really reduced their output over the past several years. The pandemic didn't help. They were doing some restructuring, and obviously there's been a lot of changes at the company.
I was going to say the core team is now, like, the core team that did then is now left, and that's the same. The core team is doing Bad Idea Comics now.
Bad Idea, yeah.
Which seems
so
like it's doing okay for a Bad Idea.
Well, I mean, if you want to get comics in people's hands, it's not a great idea. But I mean, the stuff that they put out has been pretty good for the most part, if you can find it and get it. I mean, Valiant,
you won't have a problem.
Yeah, Sailfish here has it, but my LCS does not. So I have to go find it. But yeah, I mean, Valiant's had some challenges, I think, and it hasn't helped that they haven't had sort of like a big, gripping book that people just have to get. Shadowman was really great. The latest volume of Shadowman I really enjoyed. It was kind of like bringing that character back to sort of a combination of his roots, and then also picking up the threads that were in sort of like the Valiant Renaissance in the mid 2010s.
That was
sort of like really expanded Cullen Bunn really expanded the Dead side. Mm-hmm. And then there was the follow up with Harbinger that was focusing mostly on Stanchek, but there hasn't been a lot. So no, Book of Shadows, like I mentioned, has just started. That's sort of a follow up to the Book of the Dead. Sort of like a multi-character sort of crossover type book, and now of course Bloodshot. The new XO I also didn't get into too much.
Yeah, that's not a character I really enjoy. Even on some of his more like his more quintessential runs, it's never been just something I really cared about.
There was one run from a couple years ago where it was he was across the universe on some other planet completely, and started as essentially peasant soldier all the way up to emperor of this planet. Like he conquered the planet from dirt farmer to the new emperor overlord before he decided he was ready to go back to Earth. That run, I think it was like 9 issues maybe altogether, 3 or 4 part series, was fantastic and gorgeous. So if you can find that, definitely pick it up. But yeah.
There you go. All right, I'm going to pick up on a thread that Caleb talks about, and that was about the flipping narratives back and forth in time. Not dramatically, but it's a factor in here. The Human Target series by Tom King and Greg Smallwood is starting up again soon with number 7. But as we had in the in-betweens, we had a one-shot of Tales of the Human Target, which also has art by Kevin Maguire, Michael Janin, Raphael Albuquerque, and framing sequences again by Greg Smallwood. You may as well call this Human Target and the Justice League International, because that's what goes down in here. If you've been reading the Human Target series from Black Label, you know that Ice is a major character, and this has some of her friends. And we have a storyline with Guy Gardner involved with a scion of old Hollywood who's also a Brother Blood acolyte, which was pretty interesting. You have Booster Gold getting involved with a J.D. Salinger analog whose last name is Salinger. I always thought that kind of went on with Justice League International, where everything was as subtle as a flying mallet. So I thought that worked very well. And lastly, we have a story with Fire when she was still a model, and a photographer that she is involved in a photo shoot gets shot. So those are the 3 narratives that are going around. There's a very interesting device that hits towards the end that ties the 3 together, and also ties it much more closely than you would have initially thought to the Human Target series. It's nice to see these snapshots of these characters. I enjoyed that. I especially enjoyed Tom King had the voices of these characters perfectly. It was the Guy Gardner that we knew that was, just a dope
prick.
He's yeah. When Brian, if we were gonna wait for Brian to talk about this, I might be dead. So we actually will get him back soon. His travels are
soon.
But the voice he had, if I was a writer, I have to say one of the characters I would love to write is Skeets from Booster Gold, because there's always those like digs that only a functioning character like Skeets could offer. I always thought that it was a very interesting narrative device when you do get to Booster Gold. I far and away though love the Fire story, because with both Beatrice and Tora, there's a lot of compassion in those two characters. Fire is a bit more of a hothead between the two, but that their friendship and how they treated other people was always one of the brighter elements in Justice League International, and her story I thought was remarkably touching. And as a Black Label, it either happened or it didn't. It's all up to you. And as a stopgap for something that had unexpected delays, I like this kind of stuff. I like when we have these side stories that feed into the main narrative but aren't disruptive to it at all. And I'm so excited about this series resuming, but I'm also really glad that they did take a little bit of a break to catch up, because we have this. So that's my first book.
I mean, it continues to be a gorgeous book. I mean, just like if you want to judge a book by its cover, Jesus, just pick up a Human Target issue.
Back cover.
Oh
yeah.
Look at, I mean, all of the variant covers that they've put out have just all been universally so beautifully done, but fitting with the theme very well, and like the clean theme of this book. Just very, very cool. And Bill, I don't know if I've thanked you enough in our chats, but thank you for encouraging me to finally watch the 2000s Human Target TV series.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's good. I of course have a crush
as
on
episodic television. It's a great device for a series.
Oh yeah,
and
it works great. And even though it eschews
both seasons,
definitely. And even though it eschews, I think probably like one of the main things that people know about the comic book Human Target, which is the being able to completely change identities, like very convincingly with masks or whatever. It doesn't do that, but you still are just fascinated by how this is going to go all play out, like what kind of crazy shit is going to happen this episode, and how are they going to get out of this scrape, and is he going to take his shirt off again, like those wonderful questions that keep us on the edge of our seat. But no, it's really good, and you get some good cast and good guest stars on that show. I was surprised to see how many people. I'm like, wait,
now that you've watched that, I encourage you to go to YouTube and watch the 90s Human Target with Rick Springfield. And it, for a 1992 show, it probably was okay. But it's 1992 as fuck. And also, it in some ways is almost like an unofficial sequel to The Flash, because it's the same production company. They use almost all of the Flash actors make an appearance in there, including a weird take of John Wesley Shipp as a fashion designer that's targeted for death. It's weird. But
I
watch that.
Check out
the notion of him becoming the Human Target, and the structure of him stepping in the shoes of someone else. I think there's some really interesting takes on that show too, and also the plane is fucking cool. So
they like the plane is their headquarters. Sure. It doesn't need to refuel a lot.
You just at least watch the pilot which which did not air, which has Clarence Clemens from Springsteen's E Street Band in one of the roles. Yeah, it's like this could only happen in the 90s.
There was a volume of Human Target that came out about the same time, or right before New 52, or same time as 252. That series was good too.
So the Vertigo series is very good.
Yeah, the Vertigo series is really good. But the show is exactly what you want in a week by week coming out, like a lighthearted, parody of James
Assassination
Bond,
of the Week.
Yeah,
and also for TV soundtracks, it's one of Bear McCreary's best works. I mean, that's the soundtracks. Music to that is fantastic. Yeah. So.
Yeah, but thanks for the
all the human targets, all of them.
All the human targets, they're all good. They're all unique. Yeah. They're all unique.
I could look at Greg Smallwood's art all day long. Yeah. It's just it's
yeah.
All right, Steve, tell us about something else.
I guess. So the next one I was going to talk about, this was one that I've actually been looking forward to for several months, because I saw it advertised in a back of some IDW issue that I had picked up. And don't let anybody tell you, if you are a budding artist or writer or comic creator, that nobody pays attention to the ads in the back of comics. We all do, and sometimes there's a book that we're like on the edge of our seat waiting to come out. It's really disappointing when it never comes out, which has happened before. There's been a lot of those.
After you talk about this book, I have a question for everybody.
Yeah.
On that note.
But the one that I've been looking forward to, and I didn't realize that it was coming out this past week, was Crashing, put out by IDW. And it's written by Matthew Klein, talking about Valiant here. Matthew Klein had actually worked at Valiant up until very recently. He was one of the VP of sales, I believe, or one of the VPs, and had left a couple of years ago to essentially pursue, the other side of comics rather than the publishing side. And I'm not sure if this is his first book or his first published work, but it's definitely, his first, I think, main book that he was writing. Morgan Beam is on art, Triona Farrell on colors, and Hassan Otsmane El Hau on lettering. The premise of this is something that's actually come up in like randomly in several other books, and that's sort of a hospital or a doctor that's involved in the outside of the ordinary kind of things that happen. And in Crashing, it's takes place in Massachusetts General Hospital, focused on Rose, who is a cardiothoracic surgeon, and apparently happens to be on ER rotation a lot. And she's also a 7-year sober addict. So obviously things that don't go well if you're a medical professional with a heavy stress job. And unfortunately, the extra stress here is the fact that superhumans exist and are constantly destroying things, including each other. And of course, they have to end up in hospital somewhere. And so the hospital she works at actually has a no supers policy. And unfortunately, after the latest attack from, a major villain, Gordian, there's a lot of injured people who make it to the ER, and 2 of the injured victims end up being 2 of the superheroes, and they cause some damage. They injure her again inadvertently because she just goes to check one of their eyes, and like Cyclops, it's just a constant beam of energy that burns her arm. And so all of these things are happening, extremely stressful. She's a consummate perfectionist. She wants to save everybody and do what she can. The hospital does not agree and is like, you took these patients on, you're stuck with them, we need them out of here ASAP because we don't do supers. They're destructive. They could have killed people just by being there, all of that. And with all of that stress, with the pain that she's now feeling, she's again tempted to use again. And that I think is going to be the main thread throughout the series is being told by Rose's perspective. It's very, very, much an internal monologue that we hear a lot of times as she's doing a lot of action, and she's in the thick of it. but it seems like it's going to be very interesting. And of course, it ends with a slight twist where apparently she is moonlighting also as a surgeon, but not necessarily legally and not necessarily for the good guys. So by day, she's an everybody doctor, and by night, apparently, she's working for the villains, maybe more or less under duress, but the temptation to use is there. And there's a very Nurse Jackie moment in this book. I don't know if anybody's been familiar with the show that was on Showtime years ago, but Nurse Jackie, yeah, if you ever watched it, you'll kind of get what I'm referring to here. But I'm really excited for this book. I've been looking forward to this book for a while now. And sadly, I missed Matthew by literally about 10 minutes because he was at the store signing. And I went to another store before this and wasted my time there and just missed him. But I did get a signed copy. So at least I came away with something, even though I didn't get to talk to him beforehand, which, would have been really nice. But anyway, Crashing, put out by IDW, available in stores.
Nice. All right, Caleb, what about you? Something else? Your mic.
It really helps when you unmute things. For instance, I was saying, it sucks that you missed him by 10 minutes.
My question to you guys, when you mentioned, Steve, about the ads in a book, can you remember a comic or two that when you saw the ad for it, you could not wait to get it? And since we're all different ages, these are going to be wildly different answers. But because I have two that spring to mind immediately.
Yes, and I'm trying to recall the exact title because I know it was an Image one in the early 90s, and it never came out. It was never released. It was just teased and advertised in several books. Looked great, looked crazy, looked wonderful, never, ever was released. And it's going to drive me nuts trying to remember what it was. Maybe I should just go back and look at my old Image books from, my old Spawn number 3s or whatever and see if I can find it. But yes, I do very, very much recall that and very much being pissed off as a kid.
How about you, Caleb?
So mine would have been, I think probably also an early Image book, but I remember flipping through a book at Walden Books in the mall, which, if you've heard my quote unquote comic book origin story, Walden Books plays a big role in that. I remember flipping through an Image book and seeing an ad for The Darkness, which is, Silvestri, and and also Witchblade. And I, looking at those, the biomechanical view of it, I was like, oh, this has to be the most dynamic, best story ever. It's sexy. Look at those people. Yes, this I need to view this right now. And of course, you read it and it's like, oh, it's The Darkness Switchblade. Okay. But yeah, just seeing those images for the first time, seeing Silvestri for the first time in an ad, really, really, really cool.
For me, it was the first Spider-Man, first Superman versus Spider-Man. I could not believe that was happening.
Yeah.
And then Star Wars number 7 from the original Marvel run, because that was the first continuation of the storyline in any capacity. It was before Splinter of the Mind's Eye, well before the Star Wars Holiday Special. It was the first time we had something new, and I was so excited for that. It was okay, but and it's also funny though, because like I remember those two books being particularly excited for, and the first Kiss comic. The first Kiss comic book as a kid, but I don't remember an ad for that. I think it was more like word of mouth, or there were stories. I mean, there were stories about that like in regular press, so that may have been where my exposure to it that it first happened. But I don't remember an ad for that. But the Superman versus Amazing Spider-Man and Star Wars number 7 are crystal clear. And my first recollection of a book that did not come out was Giant Size Super Teams number 1, starring the Defenders And when it did come out, it was Giant Size Defenders #1, and I was very confused at 6 years old.
Well, you were talking about the DC Implosion earlier in the episode, and I did used to get a lot of the sort of like the old late 70s comics and early 80s comics and stuff. And of course, there were several that I have somewhere in boxes that had ads for the DC Explosion, for like all these great books that were coming. And, like the big, group shots of all the, the new series that are coming out and all of that stuff. Yes, exactly. Yes.
How could you not be excited about that?
Oh yeah, look at the names,
and the Dead Man, and everything. Ray, and who the fuck is this guy? It turned out to be the Odd Man, Big Barda. Where are they all hanging out? It's like random Amazon. How could you not be excited?
Is that OMAC? That's in there?
OMAC, yeah. Because OMAC had a backup series that was initially in Commandy and then ended up in the Warlord later.
Yep. But all those, like, it looked like it was going to be super exciting. Now, of course, by the time I was reading it, 30 some years had passed, and it never came to pass. Like, it never happened because a lot of those books got canceled and everything. But I could have imagined if I was looking at that ad, just being so excited for it, and then, like hitting up my local newsstand or supermarket or convenience store and just where they go? Where did we just not get them this month? Like, where are the comics? Because that would have been still before the direct market, right? So it would have been mostly like people looking at their newsstands, more or less.
I was getting books through the direct
or
market
subscriptions.
I was getting books through the direct market by then. We had a comic shop in Paramus, New Jersey, and that's where I was getting most of my comics.
Okay.
I don't know how many other people had that because I'm like an East Coast sophisticate. So
liberal elite.
How many of the people? But look how like even the covers. These are some of the covers.
Yeah.
From the I mean, and this is a book if you want to learn the full history of it's called Comic Book Implosion from the Tomorrows, and Keith Dallas is somebody I actually know. And it's a great book to give you these stories, and they have all these like amazing breakdowns where stories actually ended up. You have covers of books that never came out. You have what Marvel was doing. You also have, and this is interesting, a gallery of characters that would have eventually been published by DC, but didn't because of the implosion, including Neil Adams' Ms. Mystic, Slayer. This eventually became Death Mask for future comics, and the most interesting one I think is Bucky O'Hare.
So Bucky O'Hare would have been DC.
Yeah. So unexpected.
If only they could have seen 12 years in the future for that massive cartoon that everybody loved and all the toys of Bucky O'Hare.
As a writer, I always, if I ever got to pitch at DC, I would pitch the DC Explosion, but it literally would be Washington, DC, where there was something went down and the heroes had to investigate. And I thought that was a nice pitch, but no one likes me. So
I do. I think
we like you, Bill.
All right, Caleb, since you like me, tell me about a book you like.
So, since I like you, I'm going to tell you about a book I like that I'm going to try to convince you to go pick up, and hopefully you'll get. But no, it piggybacks on something I've already spoken about. So over at the House of Ideas, because we got to throw some Marvel in here somewhere. There's been a series of books. They're all connected, not continuity, but they are all connected, but they're Miss Marvel and. So the first one was, Miss Marvel and Moon Knight, or I think that may have been the second one. But so they've gone through this series of characters, and the third one is Miss Marvel and Venom. Now this one is written by Jody Hooser, who has written all of them, so it's all the continuity is all connected. But it's drawn by Mr. Dave Wachter. I love Dave Wachter's stuff. I am not a Ninja Turtles person, but I picked up Ninja Turtles just because Dave Wachter drew it. Also an extremely nice gentleman. If you ever have the chance or the opportunity to meet him, he's usually the best dressed person at the con, but Dude is
you have to give that
snazzy.
to Ben Templesmith. That has to be.
Okay, but see, him and Ben Templesmith pal around together, so they're buddies. So that makes sense. But yeah, both of them like tie vest. I mean, they're just
over there. I do have a Black Hawk sketch by Dave.
Nice. Yeah, I actually don't think I own any artwork by Dave. I should. I want to. I probably will remedy that soon. But I was really excited to find out that he did the kind of the capstone to this little Miss Marvel series, where it's a series of team ups, and at the end of the day, it all borders around, as I've said before, this this swarm of robot bug creatures that Miss Marvel happens upon. That like first they land on Wolverine and they take some of him. It's like take DNA from him, and then they land on Moon Knight and they take DNA from him, and now they found Venom. And so it's a mystery. Like she's a detective. She's tracking it back to see if she can find him, find out what's going on. And as we found out in the last issue, it all kind of circles around this new-ish villain called Xeno. And I say new-ish. He may have a long continuity in Marvel. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the character. I think he's rather new, and I think Steve told us that he showed up in a X-Men book.
He was in Cable. He was in the recent Cable book with young Cable. Okay. Yeah,
gotcha.
Young Cable when they were investigating the kidnapping of a lot of mutant children. But he also, I believe, showed up in X-Force as well, trying to help some Russians or some other underground group. So yeah, he's recent. I think
so, and he kind of
didn't really get a lot.
He kind of fills a villain gap left by Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister being, he's still Mr. Sinister and one of the best characters in X-Men right now. But he was a geneticist. Like he's always trying to do something nefarious with genes, and that's essentially what Xeno is doing. And what he's been doing is taking bits and pieces of these heroes to try to make something akin to a superhero serum that will give people, a special group of people, basically those who can pay, eternal life. It'll make them immortal. And so the most recent attack, these little bugs, the syringes with wings, land on Venom, and they take a sample, they fly back, but they trace them back to this lab, and this lab has a man, but he's a very feeble, kind of frail looking dude. And once you find out he's a guy, he's got a terminal illness. He's about to die. And so that's why he volunteered to help. And at the very end of the moment, he injects himself with the serum, gets real nasty, blows up. It doesn't work out the way he wants to. And at that point, obviously there's a little bit of a fight. Venom is being Venom. Of course, he on some level wants to just murder and kill because, hey, this is a bad guy. I can do that. He's no longer tethered to Eddie Brock, so there's a little bit of the overall continuity, but he wants to be something that Eddie Brock would have been proud of. So he's dealing with himself on some sense. And Miss Marvel, as always, is the moral overtone of the book. She's like, hey, like we don't do these things. We're good people now, and she's got this just thread of just wholesomeness that I really appreciate. As with the first two, I want to take this comic, I want to roll it up, and I want to put it in my back pocket. It's Big Dumb Fun Comics. It just happens to be Big Dumb Fun Comics that are beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. Dave Wachter draws one hell of a Kamala Khan. Like just it's stunning work. I mean, it's vibrant. He's got that kind of cartoony style. It worked great for Turtles. It works great for this. Love to see him on as much stuff as possible. They trace things back. They don't necessarily save the day because the day can't be saved for some folks, but they're able to do what they can and pick up the pieces. And it really does show. And as it brings together all the characters, so you get to see not only Dave Wachter drawing Venom, but you get to see Dave Wachter drawing Wolverine and Dave Wachter drawing Moon Knight. So you get to see this plethora of Marvel characters drawn expertly coming together to have this little superhero moment and do some good. And again, there is a moralistic overtone, which is what I like to see from just an old school, fun superhero comic. So go check it out. It'll make you fall in love with Kamala Khan. If you weren't already, you should be. Super fun character. And you get to see her juxtaposed with some of the more darker characters from Marvel. So, think people that aren't afraid to sink their teeth into other things. done in really, really cool ways. So it's real fun House of Ideas stuff.
Okay, cool. All right, we're up against the clock, so I will speed through my books here. I did want to talk about an arc that was frustrating because I like the writer. I certainly love the character, but just went on too long, way too long.
I know what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about the Warworld saga, which we finally had a denouement in in Superman Warworld Apocalypse. Now I know that there's some fellas out there that are totally digging the near shirtless, near pantless Superman as drawn by Steve Beach. Somehow it's not connecting with me. I think it's just a carryover from my frustrations with the series. This was the main storyline that has been through action and a couple of specials. 22 issues in total, which was too much. I felt it was a story that could have been told in 7 or 8 easily. Basically, the main storyline was, and this is all this happened, is there's some shit going down in Warworld. There's a group of people known as the Philosians who are actually quasi-descendants of Krypton. They do speak Kryptonese. There is a connection to Krypton, but they've only ever known Warworld as a place, and Superman goes to rescue them and the other inhabitants of Warworld because Warworld's bad. It's the world of war. Mongol, the President Mongol, I've never understood that whole thing.
Not the Mongol who was, but the Mongol who
was, but the Mongol who is, who was not the Mongol who will be. Rules with an iron fist, and because it's a particularly dangerous and weird mission, he cannot bring the Justice League into it. So this is also semi sequel to Grant Morrison's Superman the Authority, because it is this version of the Authority that joins him. Caleb, I know you read a lot of this because of your love for Midnighter and Apollo. Yep. Would you agree with me that there was a sense that there were key developments that happened off screen?
There was, there were a lot of stuff that happened off panel. At least from and I'm not reading all of DC, so to hear you say that is interesting. Yeah. Because you read a lot more DC. So for example, I'm reading I'm reading Action right now, and I'm reading Superman Son of Kal-El. That's really the only Superman books I'm reading. So I didn't know if these things that were happening in other books and that were just tying in, or if they were doing shorts in the back of other books or what. But it really did, it seemed like there were things that were happening in between books that were developments that were key developments.
But particularly with Apollo and what had gone down with him, I mean, that would have been nice to have seen that. And it's very frustrating because there were great moments throughout the series, particularly that annual I know that we both talked about, which had counterbalanced Superman stories with Mongol stories. So anyway, this was the finish of it. Superman saves the day with all his friends. There's some kids. There's this weird dude, Krylux, who was basically the spiritual leader of the Philosians, and he's not there, or Panelosian, whatever the fuck they're called. We've also had backup stories with counterbalance what was going down on Earth. So we did see characters within the Superman family that weren't part of it, that weren't on the mission, though there is a connection naturally between Steel and Natasha.
Yeah.
I thought there was a lot of blown opportunities. The trans version of OMAC, I thought that could have been handled better.
I wanted to like it so bad, but I hate this version of OMAC.
It did
not like it, and I wanted to so I was rooting for it. I was like, please turn for me, and it just never did.
The whole OMAC and Light Ray storyline happened so fast, while other things were like molasses. Superman's main narrative is
it very
was
slow,
so frustrating. And And Kenny Johnson, he's a really good writer, which is what the frustrating thing. But it seems to me that this really could have benefited from an editor who said, hold on, we can't dedicate a year and a half's worth of storylines to this. I know it, opened the door for Superman, Son of Kal-El, which is
I was going to say, I think the problem was you had editors saying, hey, can you drag this out until Tom Taylor is done? Like Tom Taylor gets to pick his date, and he has. So you're going to have to make this last until he says go.
Yeah.
So I think that was the problem.
But it is finished, and that's a happy thing. And, I know there's supposed to be some shocking developments involved in Kal-El's return, but we do, I can't hate it too much when you have such a beautiful last panel of Lois Superman's arms in the air. I mean, I live for this shit.
That ass, though. I mean,
that ass. But it was also interesting that initially with the Warworld narrative, you had Midnighter taking such a huge role, and then it's like he's almost in cameos until the end. Mr. Miracle disappears. I don't know if another writer claimed him or something, and it was just very frustrating because the team is interesting, but it just did not work. And I think it's a testimony that sometimes longer isn't better. There wasn't enough. There wasn't enough steak on the bone to justify 22 issues of this.
I absolutely agree with that. I liked it better than you did. I think ultimately, no, I agree. It was way too long. It could have been done in much shorter arcs. But I like stories like this, and they've been done before, where they put Superman into a position where he's not Superman, right? He's depowered, or he doesn't have all of his abilities, and it shows that his biggest power is being aspirational above everything. So I like that as an archetype. I really enjoyed at the very end of it, you have these kids who play, children are the future, and he played along this entire thing, and they get to a point to where those kids have a moment, and it is very wrenching, and so I thought there were some really great peaks. I like seeing, and this might be the first time I've seen Apollo juxtaposed with Superman, where they really show you that, hey, like Apollo is supposed to be this, Superman archetype, but they have to depower Superman a lot to get them to be at that level. And now that they're in the same universe, I think paralleling those two is interesting in a lot of different ways. I would have liked to have seen him spend more time on it. I would have liked to have seen him give Midnight or Apollo, together, because we had the it felt like a little bit of a repetition of the Mid versus Apollo kind of situation when was it Steve Orlando who did Midnight or Apollo Go to Hell, which I think that was great. That's some of my favorite Steve Orlando writing. But it felt a little bit like that again, in which we've seen a lot of this before, but I still think it's very aspirational. Like I enjoyed it, and for his other work that he did, which had a lot of love. I forget if it was an Image book or what, but he did this very much a fantasy series. He's able to tie.
It was DC. It was The Last God. It was
The Last God. Yeah. His Sword and Sorcery.
Oh, right.
And that was also frustrating because there were moments on this issue particularly that were very Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. The whole thing is he has his niche,
like he's unlocking the thing and the
Actually, did you know he's like not only is he big into sorcery, apparently he is in the like the national band, like he plays
for the U.S. Army.
Yeah. So very interesting fellow who's writing this. Cool guy.
The other thing that I wanted to bring up with first of all, we actually have a straight man, Tim Seeley, who provided the best ever Midnighter line when he was part of Grayson. And there's that moment where Grayson is using the spiral technology to disguise himself, and Midnighter knows it's him because I'd know that ass anywhere.
When they walk out and they're wearing the towels, I need to get that omnibus. I've got to get the Grayson Omnibus.
The other thing I have to say is I thought they blew an opportunity here, since Midnighter is a Batman analog, to have a one-issue Superman Midnighter team up.
Yeah.
And how there's some things would be very much the same how he interacts with Bruce, and others would be radically different. And probably on the same side where, my boyfriend's a Superman analog, but here's the dude. There would be some really interesting interplay between the two of them, that it would seem like familiar ground, but some bits just aren't.
I'm gonna put my speculation hat on, or just my fanboy hat on. But now that we know that the like Superman has this connection with Midnighter and Apollo, and he's going back to Earth, I really hope we get some cool Midnighter and John moments, or Apollo and John moments. Because
I think Apollo's a much better fit.
I do too. Well, that's
Apollo John would be great. Midnighter would scare the shit out of him.
Well, but okay, so your dad is Superman, and he can connect with all of your Superman powers, but your dad's a straight white dude, Kryptonian, but white dude. but you've got Apollo, who is gay Superman, who can teach you a whole lot about what it's like to be you, right? Like, I mean, you're your own person, but he can, there are lessons that Cal can't teach his son. He can be there for him. He can sympathize and he can empathize, but there are some things that he needs. Look, as a young gay man, I connected with a lot of older gay people for that purpose. I want to know, I need to know your experiences and stuff. I really hope we get those moments, and I hope we get them with. Do what?
You're an old soul anyway.
Well, but still, I mean, but you know what I mean. I really hope we get that mentorship, and I would love to see that. And if they want me to write it, then fuck it, I'll do it.
Don't twist your arm or anything. Come on,
Oh, all right. But I'm still trying not to end it on a downer, because there were some worthwhile moments throughout the series. I don't want to come down on it, but I'm more happy to have the end of it happen than to have gone through that. And I just think that it's just and this is unfortunate with DC. They have had, I mean, the Legion of Doom Perpetua thing that was going on in Justice League, that was ridiculous. They need to rein it in, which is also surprising, because which is where I have hope for Joshua Williamson having such a lead role right now in DC, is that, most of his stuff is based on that 5-6 issue miniseries mentality, so maybe we'll see something a little better, but it could have used the scissors. Scissors.
Edit.
Kryptonite scissors. Yeah. All right, we're going to start wrapping this episode up, and when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him. And we do something that was a genuine Bill Zanowitz woof. How do you like that? Yeah.
It's my ring.
There you go. We'll hear how you guys do it at some point. So we do something where we essentially provide a woof to something, which may be a comic book, maybe a TV series, it may be a film, maybe a toy, it may be a charitable initiative, given the people that we have on the screen here. Anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, or possibly viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start, as I always do, with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
Well, as most people who watch and listen know, I am a TV junkie, and one of my favorite shows from last year has just come back, just started again this week, and that is Abbott Elementary. They're just coming off of just a stellar award season. Quinta Brunson, the creator and ostensibly the star of the show, and one of the writers is she won her first Emmy, and then also Cheryl Lee Ralph, who plays one of the other teachers, also won an Emmy for her role in this. It is one of the funniest sort of Office style sitcoms out there, where it's documentary style where, there's frequent interviews with the different characters, but it's consistently just beautifully funny, hilarious, heartfelt. Every episode kind of brings a tear to my eye at some point when something just really emotional happens. And, it's a celebration of teachers who really have one of the hardest jobs, and especially what type of teacher, these teachers that are in, less well-off schools in the city have to deal with. And I think they do an admirable job. And the first episode of this new season just is perfect. And also, I'm sure it made a friend of the show, Chris Cummins, very happy, because who did also guest star on this first episode? Gritty guest starred.
Yeah.
So, and had some great moments. So, but yeah, I recommend it. If you haven't checked it out, you can see it on Hulu, HBO Max, Disney Plus. It's running on everything. The first season, and then you can catch up on the new season either live on ABC or on Hulu.
Okay, thank you. I have not checked the show out, but seeing all the activity for it recently, it's making me think I should. All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your wolf of the week?
All right, so I'm gonna pull a twofer. I'm gonna go for that one. So my first wolf of the week goes out to a comic. It's called Sergeant Werewolf. It's by my buddy Rich Woodall, who is an Arkansas native, but does a lot of stuff for Scout Comics. His Black Caravan stuff is at Scout. Really great guy. That comic again. It was Big Dumb Fun Comics. That was the mission, and he accepted it. So it takes place in World War II. There's werewolf shenanigans and a pile of dead Nazis. What more can you want? My second wolf of the week goes out to, and I'm going to try to share my screen for this. So let me know if it pulls up. Let me do this. So hopefully it's sharing. And if you guys can see what I've got up now, I've got up an IMDb page.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so this IMDb page is for a new movie that's out now called Jeepers Creepers Reborn. I love the first Jeepers Creepers movie. I haven't seen anything past that except for this one. And here's why. See that name right there? Sean Michael Argo? Mm-hmm. That name belongs to my cousin. The guy that is like a brother to me. I love him dearly. He officiated Roger and I's wedding. So very cool moment. He got to actually go sit in, and he's been in the film industry for a while. He's written some stuff. Actually, he has a Space Marine series that was picked up by a small streamer that's episodic. But this was the first time that he actually got to do a film and go sit into something that was a global release in theaters, and it all got so big moment for him. Congratulations to him for that. Go see Jeepers Creepers Reborn. It's supposed to, like, legitimately, it's getting good reviews. I mean, for a Jeepers Creepers film, so it's awesome. I'm super proud of him. He's a great dude, and like I said, he officiated my wedding. He's my cousin. He's like a brother to me. We've worked together on and off over the years. I love him, and I'm excited for him. So go check out his film. He wrote it, so it's his baby. It's out in the world. Cool. So congratulations, man.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right, for my wolf of the week, we are in week 2 of the NFL season. So my sports, what do you got there?
I'm drinking because of that.
Yeah, well, you have to. First week I thought I would have to too, but I was happy with last Sunday. So my mind's on football. And there is a new sports show that is right on the money for someone like me. And Caleb, if you haven't checked this out, I think you should too. It is ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network. Emma Vigeland is the co-host of Sam Cedars' Majority Report.
Yeah.
And she knows more about sports than I ever forgot. She's just a great commentator. As Caleb can attest, so much sports journalism veers to the right.
Yeah.
I'm not just talking Barstool. It's like there's a lot of it there. Yes, you have examples of people taking stances on ESPN, but it's really, particularly print and radio, are really pretty far to the right. And for there are exceptions out there. Probably the biggest one was the Young Turks Sports.
Yeah.
For me, if it's not Ben Mankiewicz, I don't care. I've never connected with any of the people that they've had on there apart from Ben. But Emma, who actually is a TYT veteran, she's been in the Majority Report, and she often would just throw out these sports mentions. And the producer of the show, Bradley Alsop, who is a very, very cute cub, by the way, just saying, they would get into it in the middle of this political show with sports. So with Brad is kind of her, sidekick. She started a new, it's called The Network. They are streaming twice a week on the Majority Report YouTube channel. They have their own YouTube channel, which is Clips. And it's in its third week, and I'm loving it. And it's great to have sports commentary from a leftist perspective, because I think it's sorely needed. ESPN is not going to say, what's the chick in Australia that said something about Serena Williams?
Oh no, I know who you're talking about.
Margaret Sanger. No, not Margaret Sanger. Margaret. David, can you help us out?
Oh Jesus,
it's Margaret something, but she's a long-time tennis champion. I believe she was an Olympian as well.
Yeah, and it's soon. She's like Rod Laver. Like the men come to mind, but I can't think of her name.
Yeah, Margaret Court. Margaret Court. Thank you.
You're not going to hear on ESPN, a host saying, "Well, Margaret Court is a transphobic bitch." You're not going to hear that, but you hear it on ESPN. She's
a human piece of filth
based right now. Majority Report, I can take or leave at times. During the elections, they get way too Bernie bro, way too DSA. And it's like, look, Joe Biden's not your enemy. You're not going to get all the candy that you wanted. And it seems that they're learning that now. So I'm okay with that. But the sports content was always so much fun over this last year and a half. Sadly because of Michael Brooks passing. But they've turned it into something else, and I'm absolutely loving it. And Caleb, I think you should check it out because I think you would really dig it too.
I'm writing it down. Hopefully, I don't know if they I know you said they're on YouTube.
Yeah.
Do you know if they happen to put out their stuff on podcast form?
I believe they have it on Spotify.
Okay.
They're rolling it out because they're still trying to work out what the right format is. Initially, they were going to be once a week, but they spent so much time on their picks. So now that they're doing on Mondays is the actual show, and then Thursdays they have what they call OT, where they provide their picks for the upcoming.
That's going to be on my 5 a.m. cardio listen from here on out.
Really
I need that in my life, because that's why I don't listen to a lot of sports radio, because a lot of times it is just hyper masculine road. And look, I say that I'm kind of a hyper masculine dude, all things considered, but like it's usually just a bunch of bullshit. So it's like I can look at the stats myself. I don't need this.
Yeah.
And
they'll always break your heart too.
Yeah.
The sportscasters will always break your heart.
100%.
Shit, I used to listen to Jim Rome. One person, Oberman something else, but Dan LeBetard, he never broke my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and even got so Shannon Sharp, even Shannon Sharp, who I like, but sometimes he just says things that are a little bit misogynist. And I'm just like, oh, come on, dude.
A little, yeah.
God knows what I'm drinking straight whiskey, so yeah, a little. Like,
poor Steve. Look at poor Steve. He's like, I hope they stop talking about
this. Sports.
Just think about the glory of the baseball pants. Just go with that.
Yeah. I still never understand why certain gay men are not into certain
stuff. Oh my god!
Never.
Well, I mean, speaking of pants, according to Michael Henry, it is gray sweatpants season.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, I mean, yes, certain uniforms really do it for me, and basically anything that has a passing, resemblance to rugby also, does it for me. But but generally, have me talk about stats. Nah, that's not where my brain is. So.
Yeah. But like I said, Caleb, check it out. I think you'd dig it. That's my wolf of the week, ESPN. All right.
Awesome.
That's our episode. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can download us through Apple Podcasts. You can listen to us through Stitcher Radio and many of the other podcasting platforms. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you want to view us, we have a YouTube channel where you see these live streams that go out through Facebook. They are archived on our YouTube channel. And if you would please leave a positive review, we would always appreciate that. Naturally, we would always appreciate a positive review on Apple Podcasts as well. So until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion. If you're listening to the audio version, we'll be back real soon. Not sure what the schedule will be. Next few weeks are a little weird. Might be some nights that are not Thursdays, but we'll see you real soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Whoa.